You ready? You stay? Hey, Ag Teacher Thoughts here, coming at you with another video. Well, we've done it. We've made it all the way to fall. We've made it through the summer growing season, and now we're in the point in our garden where we need to do a few other things to prepare for fall and winter. So I've got a list of 10 things that you should be doing right now in your garden to be ready for winter, which in turn means you'll be ready for spring. You ready to look at the list? Here. Here. Let you down. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Jump. You got it. There we go. All right, let's look at that list. So as Raffi explores our garden, it's time that we start exploring our garden too. And we're going to look and see what were our successes, what were our failures, and what do we need to change for next year. So item number 1, review your garden. So this would be one of my flower beds that I put in. This is the one that I've probably photographed the most. It's where I had a lot of my petunias and other items. And this is a garden that, this bed was new, at least this part was new this spring. And I'm not super happy with it. You can see that the color is a little off on some of the plants, and some of them just didn't grow quite the way we wanted. So like for that is one example, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to start a different fertilizer regimen for this section of the garden to make sure that those plants are better able to grow and better be able to perform for me. Now, when we talk about reviewing our garden, it's not just the plants or things that you need to change in the care of plant. It can be like this. So this is a central section of my garden. And this, you can kind of see there's a steep slope up to the upper level of my backyard lawn. And I did a little experimentation to see whether or not I would like a set of steps in the middle of my lawn by carving them in. And yeah, it makes getting to the upper lawn much, much easier. So that's a project I'm going to be working on this fall. The weather's cooling down. It's going to be a little bit easier for the concrete. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that brickwork for my backyard steps. And another thing to do is think about incorporating some different ideas for your yard. You know, what is it that you don't have that you've always been interested in putting in, and try it? You know, maybe you also want to have a carnivorous plant garden. You can experiment and start trying just like I did. Now these have my water lilies in there, but also this is my experimentation, like I've showed you before, about doing a carnivorous plant garden. I didn't want to put a whole lot of money into it the first year because I didn't know if it was going to be successful. But now that I know it is, next year there's going to be another container there with carnivorous plants. So add something new. The next thing you should do is definitely take photos of your flower beds showing where your annuals were planted versus where your perennials are planted. Now that can help you in a lot of ways, especially if you want to start putting in bulbs in the fall and your annuals have already died out. Making sure you have photographs of those showing where your annuals were and where you traditionally plant them as compared to your perennials or your annuals can help you ahead from headaches in the spring by accidentally digging up something that you didn't want to destroy. Next, remove your dead and dying plant material. One thing a lot of people don't consider is a lot of your dead or dying plant material is going to actually hold diseases and funguses and other pests and pathogens that can then be translated into next year's garden. So let's get them out of there. Throw them either in your mulch bin, or better yet, put them in your community yard recycle so that that plant material can actually be processed and it's not going to be put back into your own flower bed. Let's not forget, all of your plants have been pushing blooms all year long, and there's a lot of old bloom spikes that may be sticking up in your yard. Now is a great time to get rid of those so that they don't become an issue later and you don't struggle around with them. And the bonus is, if some of these have set seed, now's the time you get to harvest that, prepare it, and then store it and get it ready for next year. A prime example of taking an opportunity to remove not only dead bloom spikes, but also collect that seed, is I get a chance to see some of the sports that have occurred in my garden, like this yellow gaillardia, which should look like this. So I can collect those seeds and plant them next year so I can have my own strain of yellow gaillardia. If I wasn't out here harvesting the seed, I'd never have this opportunity, and I'd only ever have one plant. Now with my lavender, it's one of those plants, one of my perennials that I know I'm not going to get another bloom off of this year. So now's the perfect opportunity to go in and select out any of the plant material I want to remove so that I have a perfect shape in spring. Now I've got a few more weeks, maybe a month, month and a half of nice warm weather left. So if I can catch this early enough in late summer after the bloom and do that trim, I'm not going to be trimming off my spring bloom and my lavender is going to have a chance to recover. So with that, I'm going to remove obviously any weeds like this prickly lettuce, and then go in and select my lavender for shape, and going to trim these into some nice mound shapes so when they come back up in the spring, I don't have a sprawly mess that just is unsightly in the garden. So there you go. This trimmed lavender plant is going to be much more manageable in the spring than the one right next to it, which is overgrowing and long. So trim it to shape in late summer before fall is going to make sure that this plant is set up to be beautiful in the spring. One of the other things you can do is actually prepare your bulb beds to be ready for your bulbs to come up this fall. So I'm removing all of the excess debris, so that's out of the way. I'm pulling up any weeds that I wouldn't normally be able to pull in the springtime, like this new young dandelion, without disturbing my bulbs. So if I get them up now, before those bulbs come up, then I'll be good to go. And it's also important to do that weeding before your bulbs start to sprout, because you don't want to actually accidentally be knocking off the tip of your daffodils or your tulips or anything like that when you're going through and pulling the weeds. So let's get that weeding done in the fall and prepare these bulb beds to look gorgeous this coming spring. The next thing on our list for fall is if you're a specialty plant collector like myself, or you do your own breeding work, now is the time for you to collect those cuttings for your winter growing. Yeah, let's get those cuttings of those firefly petunias or any cultivars or things that you've worked on that you want for next year. Let's get those cuttings done now. That gives us the opportunity to ensure that those cuttings take before this plant dies off in winter. Once it dies, or once it starts to really head downhill, it's too late. You know, a dead plant, you can't take cuttings off of it. And one that's heading downhill nutritionally or, just with old age, it's tough to take cuttings from those and get them to be successful. So while your plant is vigorously growing, before this tissue turns into hardwood, it's the time to take those cuttings. Now, we'll address how to do that in another video. If you watch the video, how to take cuttings like a professional, that's a good start. But I'll also do a special series of videos on the firefly petunias, and we'll talk about taking cuttings and winter growing options. So yeah, now's the time. Take those cuttings. Now, if you're in a growing area like us, and you never know when that first winter frost is going to strike, now is the time for you to build some temporary structures so they're ready to go to pull that warming cloth or that plastic sheeting over your gardens just to extend summer just a tiny bit more. So if you get those set up now, once that cold weather arrives, you're going to extend your summer just a little bit longer. And in fact, we're going to work on a video to show you how to build your own personal greenhouses to extend summer just that little bit longer. Right, Rafi? Right, Leo? There you guys go. Come here, Rafi. Yep, so stay tuned for those videos. I'll try to get them out shortly, but these are some of the hoops that we're going to use, and I'll show you how to make them. The next thing you should consider is mulching any of your tender perennials, or ones that you haven't grown in your area before, to make sure that they get through that first winter. And, an example of a brand new plant for me is this Phygelius. Now, Phygelius should be winter hardy in our area, but I'm seeing signs of an early fall, which means we might be in for a harsh winter. So, because of that, I'm going to go ahead and start mulching this plant with extra leaf litter and even some bark mulch over the top of this to give that plant just a little bit extra protection this winter on its first winter in North Idaho. And that should be true of any perennial that you have in your garden. If it's its first year, add a little mulch over that to give it a little bit more protection until you're certain that that plant is actually going to make it through winter on its own. And since here in North Idaho, I don't know if our winter temperature is going to get down to 10 degrees or minus 10 degrees, I'm going to make sure I add mulch to this plant just to give it just a little bit more protection for this winter on its first go through. One of the last things we should be doing this winter is after we've got our beds prepared for the oncoming frost and winter, and we still have a few of those warm days left in summer, it's time to take and spread some of our seed that we've collected this summer and get it in the ground where it can actually be naturally stratified or cold treated this winter. And then it'll start coming up when it's time for it to come up in the spring. So this is the red poppies that I collected. So I've got, well, I've got a lot. I've got more than a lifetime of red poppy seed, and it's time to get some of that in the ground. Now, I'll seed some in the fall and some in the spring, and then whichever method worked best for this. Last year I found it was fall seeding worked best, but it'll give me a chance to have those plants up and running and going in spring so that I get that really early summer bloom. And those seeds that I plant in the spring later on, that'll give me more plants that come up just a little bit later and they have a little bit longer bloom time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a spoon of this, spread it in my flower bed, and it'll be ready to come up in the springtime. Now I probably just planted over 1,000 poppy seeds, but of course in the spring, once those come up, I'll go ahead and make my selections of which plants I'd like to keep and which plants I'm going to cull. And I'll do that and show you a video about that in the springtime. But for now, let's get some of that seed in the ground, some of that stuff that we know does better if it overwinters in the soil. So there you go. There's a couple of things that you should be doing this fall to get your garden ready for next year and next spring. So when you see those pumpkins start to turn orange in the garden, it should be a reminder to start prepping for winter. Let's get those fall tasks done so that next spring our garden can be even better than it was this year. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Ag Teacher Thoughts out.